I'm going to jump to Mark at the moment so he doesn't feel too left out, because there's plenty of questions for Mark as well. This one I'm going to ask you, the first one, how do I get residency in Portugal post-Brexit? Which I suppose is somewhat related to this visa topic we're talking about at the moment, and they're commenting around the tax effects. So if you can give a 30-second snapshot on that, Mark, because I've got plenty other ones for you as well.
Yeah, sure. So there's three key routes. The first one is by virtue of an EU citizenship. So I know it sounds obvious, but if somebody has a second passport, so if they're dual nationality, British and Irish or the EU citizen, then they have an automatic right to be here, full stop. If their spouse is an EU citizen but they aren't, and again they have the automatic right to be here under family reunification as a spouse of an EU citizen. Beyond that, it divides down two tracks really. You've got the golden visa route, which, as we've been talking about, requires a rather large initial capital outlay via property purchase or investment fund, or you go down one of the D7, D2 visa routes, whereby you're not required to make any initial outlay, you're just required to demonstrate that you're financially dependent. But there does come with time restrictions on that, in the sense that you have to be here for a minimum period each year, which in itself triggers tax residency. And then that brings us on to whether tax residency would be good or bad for Portugal.
Thank you. The next sublot of questions is around NHRs. For those that aren't aware of that abbreviation, that's, well, I'll let Mark define that and give a bit of content around whether or not people should be applying for them if they can. So information and introduction to NHRs.
Yep, so NHR is non-habitual residence, so it's a 10-year tax incentivized scheme. It was introduced by the Portuguese government in 2008-2009 to attract new residents to the country. There's only one qualifying condition, effectively, is that you haven't been tax resident here in the last 5 years. And if you tick that box, you're effectively into the scheme. And then, as regards whether you should apply for it, in 99% of cases, it's a no-brainer. You always benefit with NHR status. There has been 2 or 3 examples of clients I've come across where they wouldn't benefit from the NHR status, but that is rare. So as I say, as a general rule, always apply, but you do need to seek individual advice. The other thing is just be aware that you need to plan for the scheme. So it is a tax incentivized 10-year window, but to optimize it, you may need to restructure your assets and your investments. So it doesn't work automatically, it works with planning.
Thank you. And on that, the other popular question is around their other investments and pensions. So the one specifically here is, can I keep my UK pension and investments? So if you can alleviate a bit on that, perhaps, Mark.
Yeah, there's no restrictions. There's no requirement to get rid of those investments or pensions. You can keep them, but the question is, are they best suited for Portuguese tax residency? As a general rule, when we're setting up structures inside of the UK, it's there for a UK tax resident. It's not necessarily designed for EU residency. So again, it needs a one-to-one analysis. So in short, you can keep them, but really look in detail as to what they mean and if there's any alternatives that's better if you are becoming a tax resident here.
Thank you. And this is one that comes up every time I talk to people around the differences between residency, tax residency, domicile and citizens or citizenship. Can you just alleviate the difference on them and how that impacts your role of the client's journey?
Yeah, this is a really good question, because residency, there's 2 types of residency. There's legal residency, so you may have the right to reside in Portugal, for example, but if you're not physically here, then you're unlikely to be a tax resident. So legal residency is different to tax residency. Tax residency is generally determined by your physical presence rather than a piece of paper. It can be quite complicated if you're leaving a country, because, for example, if you're leaving the UK, you could still be considered tax resident if you spend too much time back there. And that could get triggered by spending as little as 16 days back in the UK. So you always have to be aware of the country you're leaving, not just the rules here in Portugal. Citizenship is just your nationality, effectively, or any other nationality you acquire, because I'm going for Portuguese citizenship this year, but I'm still going to be a British national as well. And then domicile has a very specific meaning if you're coming from a UK context. Domicile is really a common law legal concept, which just means where you originate, and it has a very limited scope, and that scope is applicable to UK inheritance tax. So as a general rule, if you originate from the UK, you always remain taxable or subject to inheritance tax in the UK, irrespective of where you live around the world.
Thank you. That's a good tag in, because there's a few questions here for you, Andrea, that I'm going to come to with regards to the golden visa scheme and the different schemes that are available. Just because there's been so many questions around the topic, do you mind giving a quick introduction to those that aren't familiar with this as to the different options that are open to them, please?
Yeah, okay. Regarding the golden visa, as Claudia says, the clients, we can talk about the general golden visa. So you need to buy a property $500,000 or more. Exist another special options for properties in low density that the price can be less or lower. However, regarding the mortgage, it's important the clients understand, the investors understand. So always can use a mortgage. Okay, so it's not doesn't mean because you want to buy a property with the golden visa proposal doesn't mean that it's not possible for you get a mortgage. So or a loan. You always can buy a property, invest the minimum amount required, and then the remaining amount, if you imagine if you want to buy a higher property with a higher price, you always can ask for a loan for the remaining amount. It's not you always can do it since you never if you pay the minimum amount required. Okay, so regarding the golden visa, it's very simple. You have the general golden visa, you need to buy a property $500,000 or more, and then exist special situations in the properties need to rehabilitation works. In this case, you can buy property with less price. Okay. However, at the end, you always can buy any property, but it's important before you do it, you check with your lawyer or the real estate. Joe, of course, knows about that, and the Berkshire is always prepared to do that. And for sure, just show the products for visa because since the beginning of this year, some properties isn't possible to use for the golden of them, and for sure the real estate always show you if it's your proposal to be buy a property for the golden visa to get the golden visa. The real estate always show you the properties that it's possible to use to do for this proposal. All right, okay.
Thank you. Back to the audience questions, because we're getting quite a few coming in, so thank you for everyone submitting them. There's one here from Ben and Becky around the golden visa scheme.
Steve, sorry, can I just say one thing about the golden visa? If everyone wants to have a look on our website, which is www.portugalproperty.com, any golden visa product is labeled as golden visa, so it really does break it down and makes it easy if people are generally just looking for golden visa properties.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you. That might be somewhat connected to the question from Ben and Becky in the audience, asking for confirmation of the precise area for the golden visa scheme. It's hard to get an exact map, is what Ben and Becky suggest. Is that something that, Joe, you can answer or give some direction on?
Yeah, absolutely. It has become more and more difficult to get the exact maps, and the exact maps are depending on probably on the low density areas. There's a lot of grey areas here. Now it depends on what we go off, and this is why we say that we always have to check the documentation and the areas with a lawyer before we actually advertise it as golden visa. So for a 280 golden visa would have to be in an area of low density, on a building over a certain age, and requires the renovation works. Whereas if you were looking at a 500,000 golden visa, now there's only certain areas that you can get those. You can get them still in the Algarve, but only on touristic developments. Madeira anywhere in Madeira still qualifies. There are other pockets as well, but it does really come down to a touristic license now. As I say, there's so many different products when it comes to golden visa now, and every single one is just, it's different. You know, there's also the 350 golden visa investment where you're investing into a fund. There's a 280 golden visa investment where you're investing into a fund. And again, it's one of those that I would really say you need to sit down with someone on a one-to-one basis and talk through the different products that are so we can find what best suits your criteria.
Thank you, Joe. And to echo that point, there's a lot of specific questions coming in around the difference between D2 and D7 visas and timelines of getting benefits of those visas. We'll try and come back to them if we may towards the end of the session, but they're pretty specific case by case. So those you're probably going to get the better benefit of reaching out to the panel directly after the event. Just so everyone's aware, following the event, you will get an email with everybody's contact details. So if we don't unfortunately get to all the questions this evening, so we're obviously in demand, which is nice to see, but I don't want anyone to feel underloved if we haven't got to your question. So please feel free to reach out to us after the event if we don't get to your question. Thank you. Andrea, I'm going to come over to you for some legal specifics, if you wouldn't mind. The questions that have been backing up from a legal perspective are, do you have to be a Portuguese resident in order to buy a property? And do you have to be in Portugal personally in order to buy a property?
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Good question. I don't know who made it, but it's a good question to clarify everyone. So first, it's not needed you be in Portugal. Any investor or buyer, a potential buyer, doesn't need to be in Portugal. It's a good answer. It's good news. Why? We as lawyers, we can do everything overseas. Okay. So since the client choose the property, the client just need to come to us too. So Andre or another lawyer, I choose a property. I want to go ahead. How it works. It's very, very simple for our client. So we will request some documentation, the passports, the personal information, so we can draw the power of attorney. We can send a power of attorney by email for our clients, everything very quickly in one day, and some hours. Our clients can sign the power of attorney in US, in this case, or another place. There you are. Okay. In any country can sign in the public notary and send to us the power of attorney. With the power of attorney, we can do everything without our client in Portugal. It's not necessary the client be present in Portugal. Just for you understand, in the last 2 years, 80% of our process always happens without our clients here because the COVID and everything. Sometimes it's not possible for our clients come to Portugal, okay, to buy a property. So answer your question, is not necessary. We can do everything. When I mean everything, it's everything overseas. Okay, we can manage all the process until you sign the title deed, sign the deed, and get the keys and everything. The client just need to come to Portugal, collect the keys, and enjoy the property. So another question regarding if it's necessary the client be resident in Portugal to buy a property. No, at all. So the clients always can choose. Usually the clients don't want to be a resident in Portugal, just buy a property or for investment, or to get the property for holidays, or to get the property for get the visas. But it's not necessary the client be resident in Portugal for any option, or for the investment, or for holidays, or to get the visa. It's not necessary in this case. To get the golden visa is not necessary our clients be residents in Portugal. The golden visa was designed for clients doesn't have time to be in Portugal. Of course, they can be, but it's not mandatory. Okay, Stephen, I don't know if it is clear.
No, that's comprehensive. That's okay. Good. That gives a clear answer. There's a few more questions coming in live from the audience, so I'm going to come back to you now, if I may. 2 questions in from Sean, saying, is there a different process for locals versus foreigners when buying property abroad? He's trying to determine if it's better to purchase the home through his wife, who is Portuguese. And he also asks whether or not there's any benefits around buying via family trusts or businesses, I suppose. Well, family trusts in this case, as we've covered businesses earlier in this evening's session.
It's for me?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay. So if a client wants to buy a property and his wife is Portuguese, so it's always better because exist another ways. Imagine to get the residence or something. So regarding the purchase process, honestly, doesn't matter. Okay. Regarding the visa, so have some benefits if he is married more than 3 years with a Portuguese wife. So in this case, of course, exist some benefits that they can use to get the visa. But in fact, for the purchase process, doesn't matter if the buyers is Portuguese or non-residents, is exactly the same. Okay.
Another quick one for you, if I may. This came in from Wendy. I'm wondering if I can buy a property with a view of applying for a golden visa later. How long can I leave it before applying? That's Mark.
Good. Thank you, Steve.
That's for Andrea.
Yeah, it's for me. Yes. Okay. So, Stephen, thank you. It's a good question again. Our clients, the investors, the buyers can buy a property, okay, and can decide after if they want to use this property for this kind of proposal to get the visa, the golden visa. However, it's very important. Pay attention on this. If our clients want to buy a property and have this possibility to maybe to request or to apply for the golden visa, we need to manage all the process for the golden visa. What does it mean? Imagine in a normal purchase in Portugal, you can send the funds direct straight away for your lawyer, lawyer client bank account, and then your lawyer can pay to the seller, no problem, on the title deed or on the promissory contract. If you want to use a property for the golden visa program, you always need to pay to the seller straight away from your bank account in Portugal. What does it mean? Does mean that it's not possible you send the funds to buy the property, to pay the price through your lawyer's bank account. What does it mean at the end? So if you have in mind, maybe you can buy the property and you want to use this property, you don't have sure yet, but maybe in the future you want to use this property to ask for the golden visa, to apply for a golden visa. So we need to make all the process regarding the rules, the golden visa rules, okay? It's the only thing. Then you have time till 5 years. You can decide if you want to use this purchase or this investment to apply for a golden visa. Okay, you don't need to worry, and it's not something that you need to decide immediately. You can buy the property, you can make all the things, create the process regarding the golden visa rules, and then you can decide after. All right.
Thanks.
Mark, I'm going to come back to you if I may.
Yeah, sorry,
Claudia.
No, it's fine.
Mark, next over to you if I may for a few power questions, because again, I'm conscious to the audience that joined us this evening, we might not get to all the questions. There's one here which is quite interesting from David, which is around bringing a car into the country when I relocate to Portugal for tax residency. So what would be the process be bringing a car into Portugal, please?
Well, so from a tax point of view, you can bring a car in if you've owned it 6 months, I believe, and also you've been a resident of the country you're importing it from for 6 months. The only condition there is that once you bring it into Portugal, you can't sell it within a year. The alternative route is bringing it in and just paying tax on it, and then you can sell the car whenever you wish. But the tax on importing of cars can be very expensive in Portugal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to myself for some currency questions because there have been a few come in prior at the registration point. So a few have asked, why do you use an international specialist over a bank? That's normally from the US people that are in the audience, because Generally speaking, the currency market world is huge. Again, to give an element of scale, last year here we helped move over 3.5 billion euros. And in the nicest of ways, if we couldn't provide a value or a saving, we wouldn't be here. So I'd always encourage people to reach out to have that conversation to see if we can save some money or indeed add some value, which of course we can. Can I buy my currency before I buy a property? This is probably again from our US audience this evening, because US to euro have been particularly high, kind of a 20-year high very recently with everything going on. And yes, you can. So we've got specific regulations to enable us to service people on both sides of the channel following Brexit, and equally over in the US as well. And that enables them to buy the currency before they bought the property. The benefit of that obviously is if you've been looking for a property for a while and the rate of exchange goes up, it means your budget's gone up, it means you can get a bigger place, and people want to often lock that in and not have the fear or the risk of not being able to buy that dream property if the market moves against them. Another question around risk management. This is a popular one as well. So when you're buying your property and moving forward, people are normally doing it in 3 different ways, 3 different strategies, and this is another advantage of dealing with a specialist over going to the bank. So the bank will normally go, here's the price, take it or leave it, whereas here we'll go, here's the rate, here's the trends, here are the days and events coming up that might make it better or worse, so the client can make an informed, educated decision. But we'll often go beyond that to understand the client's risk appetite as to what happens if the rates go down or up, how will it impact the purchase. So people will often go, well, I'll buy now so I know exactly what the cost of the property is. Others might go 50-50, 70-30, 60-40 as kind of a mixed approach. This is normally if it's a Mr. and Mrs., to be honest, and they've got different views. So they'll mirror their risk exposure with their capital exposure. And others, once upon a time, but it's not as popular now, will kind of wait until there is a requirement for the funds. Obviously doing that is the most high risk, because it means if the rate's gone against you, you might have ended up to go back to Claudia and ask to borrow more money or take more money out of savings if it's gone in the wrong direction. So there's a few currency questions. Does anything live come in from there? Another Steve has asked, how easy is it to open up an account? It's really easy. It doesn't cost or obligate you any way to do it. It just basically allows us to complete our regulatory requirements to make sure that you're you and not pretending to be you in the nicest of ways. So I would certainly encourage anyone who's got an international exposure or reviewing it to review our service to see if we can help. That's why we're here this evening.